All right, assuming that we've already gone ahead and located the appropriate GitHub repository for this project, we're ready to go ahead and jump into the Kubeflow user interface. From there, click on the Notebooks item in the sidebar and then click New Notebook. We're going to give our notebook a name, nothing too terribly fancy. We're just going to call it Digit Recognizer. And once you've given your notebook a name, you can go ahead and just take all the defaults that are there, click the Launch button, and then we'll wait a few seconds for our notebook server to come online. Once it's come online, we're ready to go ahead and click the Connect button. This is going to go ahead and bring up a Jupyter Labs UI. Once we're here, we want to click on the Terminal button to bring up a terminal, and then we're going to want to do our Git clone for that Kubeflow/examples repository. And once that's all been pulled down, you'll see that the examples directory is now in the navigation bar. Click on it, and now we want to locate the digit recognition Kaggle competition folder, and there we want to locate the KFP or the Kubeflow Pipelines notebook. Open that up, get a little bit of real estate. And then the first step that we want to do is go ahead and install the latest version of pip. Go ahead and run that particular cell. Then the next cell that we want to run is to install the Kubeflow Pipelines SDK. And we'll go ahead and run that particular cell. And after you've done that, it's very important that you restart the kernel. So that we've gone ahead and restarted that kernel. Next up, let's go ahead and confirm the version of the KFP SDK that was installed. Run that. Once you've confirmed that you've got version, in this case 1.8.11, we're ready to import our Kubeflow pipeline libraries to go ahead and run that cell. We're now ready to move into our component creation section of the notebook. And the first component that we're going to create is the component that is going to download the appropriate data set. So go ahead and highlight that section of the notebook, click the Run button. Now we move on to the second component that we want to create. And in this component, we want to load the data set that we just downloaded. So highlight that section of the notebook and run it. And once that's executed, we're ready to move on to the third component that we want to create. And in this component, we're going to pre-process the data set that we just downloaded as well as loaded. So here, go ahead and highlight that section of the notebook and run it. Then we move on to the fourth component that we want to create in our pipeline, which is going to be our machine learning modeling component. So let's go ahead and highlight those cells and run it. And that takes us to our fifth and final component that we want to build in our pipeline, which is going to be the prediction and evaluation component. So highlight that section of the notebook and run it. And once that's concluded, we're ready to create some lightweight components. We'll go ahead and run that section of the notebook. And once that executes, we're ready to move on to the next main section of the notebook, which is the actual Kubeflow pipeline creation. So first we'll create the client, and then we'll define the pipeline. And then we'll do a final piece here that will specify some input, outputs, and some paths. And then we're ready to execute our final piece, which is our pipeline function, and that will kick off our pipeline. We can now go ahead and click on the Run Details hyperlink, and this takes us directly to the runtime execution graph, where in real time we're going to actually see our pipeline execute. You can see our first component has completed. That's our download data component. It's then moved on to the load data component. Once that completes, we move on to the pre-processing data component. Once that completes, we move on to our modeling component. When the modeling component completes, we move on to our prediction. And once that step is finished, we can click on it, go to the Visualizations tab, and we can now see our confusion matrix that we specified. And that's it. You've successfully created a Kubeflow pipeline using the KFP SDK for the Kaggle Digit Recognizer competition.